okay
Is
with.
anyone else thinking about R. Kelly right now?
No.
Okay, we're not even gonna go there, but
Put him on.
He brought it. Yes.
I was thinking
Trapped in a
Diddy,
closet.
but
Perfect.
I want to like bring like a different lens. So like in like we'll talk about like queer relationships for a second.
sure, yeah.
I feel that like the assumption being made here is like older people have more lived experience and therefore hold more power, and younger people have less lived experience and hold less power. I think that like in queer relationships, oftentimes it's like when you, at least in my experience, like when I see these relationships where there's like a 10-year age gap or something, sometimes the guy is like, he may be older, but he may have like been out a lot less of time. You know what I'm saying? So like he lived his life like as a gay man for like such a maybe like 2 years. Whereas like the 24-year-old that he's dating has been out like since he was 16 years old, just like he's really comfortable in his sexuality and like how he navigates the world. So when we look at like talking about experience, I think that the power balance lies a lot like with the younger person in that situation, because they know what it means to like live life as a queer person, whereas like the older person really doesn't. So I think that, yeah, like in like queer relationships, and that's like the experience I can speak from, is like I think that those age gaps are fine. It's just about like being cognizant and having those conversations and having good friends around you to let you know when you're being like manipulated.
Yeah.
So like to add to that, I want to kind of bring this in two different directions at the same time. So one of the directions is like, it's very interesting that we're having this conversation because I almost had it. It's very interesting that we're having this conversation because we're not really taking into context, why do men like younger women? Yes, it is based on what's it called? Because they're easier to mold, but it's also based on media and society, because we praise women who are younger with older men. And when it's older women with younger men, it's not the same way, but it's also the older you get as a man, you're like aging with wine. But the older you get as an older woman, you're like, ugh, you're sagging,
that's a fact.
you're wrinkly, you're old, you're ugly, and we need to upgrade. So we upgrade by getting a 20-year-old. She's easier to maintain, you know? So I think that's a huge part of it. And I think the other thing is, it's interesting talking about like relationships like this because we're not very much of a relationship generation, I feel. We're very much of a hookup culture.
Fling.
So that's very different. So like, yes, we can say this, but we're not really doing it in practice. We're not really being in relationships. We're spending more time in people's bed sheets or on people's couches than actually being in a monogamous or any type of relationship. So I think it's harder to actually dive into this question because I know more people who are trying to fuck than who are actually trying to be serious. So I think we like the thought of being in a relationship more than we actually like the actual emotional weight of being in a relationship.
But I think to that point, there's a different expectation on acceptable age gaps if you're just fucking versus acceptable age gaps when you're in a relationship.
So what is the acceptable age gap if you're fucking?
More lenient or less lenient?
I think it's more lenient if you're
so
just fucking than if you're in a relationship.
Yeah, so this
I
is where we
agree.
went.
Yeah.
Hey guys, we just
Switch up the combo. Age gap to whatever it is.
straight doing this is what I.
But
all right.
but I think that's I think like that's true, right? Is that because Western culture, I mean not necessarily the cultures we grew up in, but just like media and everything that surrounds us, hooking up is so much more acceptable, and relationships have become like these magical unicorns that they're few and far between. And so the baseline for what is a good and healthy relationship, for the most part, fits into like a pretty small box, right? Whereas like anything that you want to do outside of that box tends to be more accepting. Not saying it's a good or bad thing, but I'm just saying that like that's more or less what we're being fed all the time.
My experience, I guess I speak a lot of the relationships that I'm thinking about in terms of age gap. I am speaking from the Somali community. I'm not representing the Somali community.
Don't come for
Look
her
at
in the
me.
comments.
I just have my little small world that I'm in. It's interesting. So being 30, I'm starting to see some guys that I've known for a while, and it's like, oh, they're getting married. It's like, oh, that's amazing, happy for them. And then like I hear who they are marrying, and it's someone like almost like it could be like 7 to 8 years younger. So that means that they're like 23, and I'm just like, oh, suddenly I'm like, who is it? Then if I know the girl too, I'm just like, why? Because I see a lot of younger women who even speak like this. Oh, he's letting me get that car.
Hey.
Like
Letting.
he's letting. They speak this way. They really do. It's like
Oh boy.
it's like kind of permission seeking. It might not be that language all the time, so it doesn't feel that way. But being someone who's lived a little bit, thank God.
She's 30, she's brand new.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
it's like I'm able to hear it. Maybe I wouldn't have heard that language at 23 if I was her friend. I wouldn't have caught that stuff. I wouldn't.
Okay,
have
but
caught
letting
that.
in what sense? Like he's giving me the permission to buy this car, or is he's letting me get this car because he's paying for it?
It's you have the conversation,
Okay.
okay? But really, like this is what I'm thinking. I don't know. I wasn't in that house when that happened. But it's like maybe we're talking, and it's just like, oh, I'm thinking of getting this, and then the way he's speaking is more like he's steering the conversation and guiding her, like I guide the youth that I worked with when I was a youth worker. You do that kind of like that interviewing style where you get them to reach that answer where you think they need to discover. Motivational interview.
Stages of
And then-
change. Yeah.
And then you're doing that, and it's just like, is that the kind of relationship you want to be a part of?
No, but what
I
about if
don't-
that person's okay with it though? What about
But
if
how
that's
do
what
you?
they're
Well, clearly
If you
she
don't
is.
understand what's going on,
Yeah.
how are you okay with it? Is the problem, right? Like if you don't realize it's happening to you,
It's a
you're
finesse.
not able to make the decision of this is something I'm okay
Is
with.
anyone else thinking about R. Kelly right
It's a
now?
finesse.
Oh,
No,
okay, we're not even gonna go there, but-
Put him on.
He brought it. Yes.
I was thinking
Trapped in
Diddy,
a closet.
but we went to R. Kelly. Okay.
Can we edit that?
Yeah.
No, but I'm just saying, no, overall, if that person's okay, let's just say that 23-year-old is fine with that type of relationship. And she kind of understands, okay, there's still a lot of things that I got to go through.
Yeah.
And here's my partner who's helping me, who's also gone through some of the things that can help me grow. I don't see where there's a problem.
I want to mess up myself. I don't need some guy 10 years older than me telling me that BMW is too expensive, kid. I don't have time for that.
Why
You're my
not?
partner. Let my mom tell me that.
What?
Let my mom tell me that.
But then,
You're not my
but then
mom
when
and
are you
dad.
going to be in a
It's not
relationship?
really balanced.
That's
It's
what I'm
not
saying.
real.
But there's
it's
always
going to
be something that you're not going to know, though. But there's always
here's
going to
the
be
thing.
something you're not
It's
going to know.
similar to when I was young.
Word.
I was not allowed to do certain things because I didn't know it was good for me.
Yeah.
So I was not allowed to even do it.
Yeah.
And it was that power structure is healthy because that's my mom. She can tell me, and my dad can tell me what to do and what not to do. But the fact that like someone is restricting me and they're my partner and I'm not allowed to do that, I guess it's like a control. It's like a little bit of abuse. I'm going into there. But it does come with that age gap where it's like, it's not really like a balanced conversation where we're kind
It's
of
not an actual partnership.
Yeah.
That's
No,
not
but
how
you can be the
partnership is
same age, though,
defined.
and be that person, be like, Anna, you're not getting that car. It's too expensive. You can be the same
100%.
age and still have that same
100%.
type
Yeah,
of conversation.
but it's not like
But
you're
it's
not
a
allowed.
conversation if the girl's already like adopting this language of
Yeah.
like he's letting me.
But what about
Yeah.
if that person, they're the same age and they're still having that type of conversation? Oh, he's letting
that's
me.
a different type of conversation,
But I
though.
think like the whole issue here about like having like unequal power dynamics in a relationship are that like a lot of relationships don't last forever. So like you need to like be able to, I don't know, I have a problem with someone not being able to stand on their own 2 feet. So if you
No,
feel like
agreed,
you're looking
agreed.
towards this person to like, raise you in a sense in your relationship, then yeah, you're not developing the skills to stand on your own 2 feet when one day he leaves you. Or one day, you're gonna need to be giving advice to someone else, and it's kind of putting all the weight and responsibility in the relationship about like guiding your family towards a healthy way in the man, and like that, like we know that patriarchy doesn't work. Like look at the world around us that was built by it. Like when we let like men just like control one narrative and like set the way forward and not in an equal partnership, I don't think that it leads to good things.
See, I feel like you're making a very interesting point, which is very
Appreciate
true. It's true because I think a lot of people do get into relationships and are like, I want a dominant man. So a lot of people who get into those relationships expect that to happen. Like this nigga said no. He said no, I can't do anything. But some people don't prefer that. But a lot of women that I've seen talk about conversations like this do like that. And that is sometimes why they go for older men, because there's this assumption of them being dominant and assumptions of them being able to like guide the family.
Okay,
So-
so I will jump in there, right? Like Only because, like, I appreciate a man who stands on his own 2 feet, who has a backbone, who expresses a level of assertion, right? Because I like it to be an actual partnership, right? If we have to go toe-to-toe on an issue we don't agree on, like, let's go toe-to-toe on an issue that we don't agree on. That does not mean that I'm attracted to a man that is controlling. So I think it's really, like, there's that line
And
of
it's
that
very
conversation of what women are saying,
That's
of
more
what people
balanced.
want to hear, and what the truth actually is. Because being assertive does not mean being dominant. We can still be partners, equal but different, and have our own minds and our own backbones, and you not have to assert control over me. So I think it's really tricky to have that conversation about women liking certain things in men, because those are 2 separate conversations that get clumped into one.
But the thing is, the reason why I mention that is because people don't see it that way, they see it this way. And a lot of society has structured the dominant male to be in a certain perception. And that's the stereotypical certain perception that they have. That sounds healthier, but not everybody's in healthy relationships, especially as millennials. I think that's very interesting to bring that up, but it's realistically, it's not what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a nice thought, but I know more people who say things that are like, I want a dominant man. And they say a lot of toxic masculinity, and they assume that as positive male attributes. So I understand where you're coming from, and you're right. But I see a lot of people who say it and see it as a positive thing. But then the other thing is, I think we need to bring into context that some people prefer younger women also if they're settling down, you know, for babies. Like, just let's hypothetically put that in there and see where that lands. Because some people would prefer younger women, because younger women technically have an easier time giving birth, and the process is not usually supposed to be as hard and as hurtful, I feel, when you get older, because the process is harder, especially that you're older and your body moves differently. So I feel like that could also be an impact on why people choose somebody who's younger to have children, because you have a more longer time span to have children.